I think we'll get started. Andrew, did you want to kick us off?
Thanks, Jack. Yes, just to say three things. I'm Andrew Romanoff. I'm the Executive Director of Disability Law Colorado. I want to say thank you both to our partners in this effort, including the ARC and CCDC, uh, and to all of you for joining us. I know there are other ways to spend your Monday morning. At least I'm told there might be other ways. I don't know. We we do this a lot. Uh, Second of all, on a somber note, I wanted to just say a word and ask you all to take a moment and reflect on the life and legacy of Senator Faith Winter, whom we lost, as you know, earlier. Many of us on this call knew Faith, and I know I speak for all of us when I say our hearts go out to her friends and family. So let's just pause for a moment and reflect. Thank you. On a happier note, I want to offer a word of congratulations to my colleague Jack Johnson, newly elected to the Westminster City Council. Unfortunately, Jack has now required us to address him as Your Honor, Your Excellency, um, and I prefer Your Adequacy. But Jack, thank you for leading us in this effort, and I'll turn things over to you, our public policy liaison and distinguished gentleman from Westminster, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you everyone for being here. I'm looking at the attendee list and I see so many friends. Today, is an opportunity for all of us to hear from a couple of elected officials who are going to champion our work and who have championed our work over the past several legislative sessions, and then also hear from organizations, including Disability Law Colorado, but many of our partner organizations who are doing work on behalf of our community to protect our rights and advance our legislative priorities. And so I will introduce a couple of our speakers, and then I am going to turn it over to them. And then I will come back and give you all an opportunity after we've heard from both the legislators and the speakers to ensure that you all have an opportunity to ask questions. If I don't get to your question, still please put it in the chat, and I will make sure that it gets either answered by me or routed to the appropriate person to get answered at the end. I did want to take an opportunity because, in addition to the speakers we are also joined by several legislators here in the audience. Representative Tatone, Representative Phillips, Representative Bacon, Representative Bradfield, Representative Jackson, Representative Joseph, and former Representative Mary Young. We appreciate all of you being here, and I'm going to now start with our legislators who are speaking. And at the very top of the list, I see we will go with, because she was here first, Representative Froelich. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Representative Froelich. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for being here. What a great group that I just want to start off by saying has really changed the way we interact with the disability community in the Capitol for the better, for the good, and really um, required the legislature to listen to this community first and foremost before proceeding with what we may think or other people might think is the path. And so thank you for this continued activism that is really voluminous and bold and consistent. So really want to thank this group for that. And as evidenced by the fact that you're willing to get on a Zoom on a Monday, I'll be brief, although it didn't sound like I was going to be brief with that long blabbling introduction. But I'm Meg Froelich, and I'm happy to carry sort of whatever legislation needs to be carried to further the rights of this community. And I just highlighting coming up this session, in addition to a relatively small bill in the reproductive space about sterilization or forced sterilization, We're against it, by the way. But I also want to reiterate what we said last Disability Advocacy Day, which is that we really are striving for the disability community voice to be woven into everything we do at the Capitol. And I think this will be particularly important this year as we approach a whole host of road safety legislation coming at it from a bunch of different angles, but obviously with the passing of Senator Winter, and we've been hearing from parents and loved ones and survivors of our terrible road safety statistics over and over again. And so I really want to make sure that everyone on this call is involved in those conversations as we go forward, looking at everything we can do to make folks safer on our roads, and particularly, of course, folks who aren't in a car. And that's all I'll say for today, and I look forward to answering any questions that may come up. Thanks.
Thanks, Representative Froelich. I'll turn it over now to Representative Clifford.
I am delighted to file this morning as our pre-file so that it comes out in the first range of bills on January 14th, housing protections for people with disabilities. This is another piece of legislation that's directly aimed at dealing with the changes in the federal environment that we can't seem to keep up with. And as proud as I am about the adoption of our homestead protections last year, this is another step in that direction to ensure that Coloradans have first line access to protections for their housing. There's literally no telling what's going to come out of this legislative session. This is a fascinating year where I think the first time in Colorado history where the entire executive branch of the state government will change after the next election. And with that, we get a whole new host of people and new directors and new possibilities. But this particular legislative session is going to be a big wave goodbye from a lot of people on the way out the door. And so predictability is not something that we can count on. So I think it will be a fascinating year for us to deal with what it looks like as far as disability legislation, but also all legislation. So I think anybody that thinks that they're an expert in the Capitol will have to grow new heads this year about how we engage with all of the constituencies in the building. And I have some fears about what that looks like with our legislation, just based on the types of fights that we've had in the past. So I want to take this opportunity to speak to the need to be at the ready, the need to be capable and ready of organizing our community to show up quickly and to move quickly. If you guys remember, even with the Olmstead bill last year, sometimes we scheduled two committee hearings in the same day in order to move that legislation in the direction and the speed with which we had to do that in order to make things work politically. So, um, you know, have our community in the background, ready to move at all moments once legislation starts moving from the building. And I cannot wait for the fun that we have in store for the 2026 legislative session.
Thanks, Representative Clifford. Next, I will give it over to Representative Katie Stewart.
Thank you to the Honorable Jack Johnson for that introduction. Congratulations, by the way. And thank you to Disability Law for inviting me. You are such great advocates at the Capitol and across the state. It was an honor to run legislation with Rep. Zokai this past year, and I know that Jack and I are working on how to get into some good trouble this coming session. I represent the southwest corner of the state, and I have a teenager with bilateral hearing loss, and I also consider myself to be part of the disability community with a mobility issue. So I I feel like I have some understanding of uh, what community members face across the state every day. And I know at the federal level, I've heard from many constituents in my corner of the state how impactful HR1 has been and not beneficial, especially to the folks in the disability community. So, very fortunate that I can continue to be a voice at the Capitol to make sure that we protect our communities in Colorado from the harmful legislation coming down from the federal government. And always happy to listen and lend my voice and appreciate your support. So again, looking forward to the good trouble we can get into this coming legislative session. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Stewart. And next, I'll pass it over to Representative Zokai.
Thanks, Jack. Thank you, everyone, for being here. My name's Yara, represent House District 52 in Fort Collins, and I'm just very excited to see so many people on this call and look forward to another year of fighting alongside all of you. For me, this work is very personal. Watching my sister navigate an MS diagnosis and have to navigate housing systems, healthcare systems, and just moving through the world with an invisible disability, it's become very clear to me that there is so much work we have left to do to build society that is accessible and just. And I think in this moment, it is extremely important that us legislators remain strong voices as we are seeing rights be rolled back across the country. I will say, to kind of piggyback off what Rep. Clifford said, it honestly surprised me just wrapping up my first year here that passing bills in this space is not easier. But truly, we can't wait for permission to demand equity. And the barriers that the disability community faces are policy choices. And often those that are resisting changes to those policy are very well resourced and powerful interests in the Capitol. But we have gone against them before and we won. We won last year with updates to the Anti-Discrimination Act to fill in gaps that were left by decisions made federally. And so we're going to continue to take on some of those interests in order to build a world that is accessible and, equally important, a world that is accountable when those systems fail. And I say we because, as just any one legislator carrying a bill, it's not what helps us win these fights. We win because movements show up, because people share stories, and because people refuse to be ignored. And so I want to thank you for your advocacy and for demanding better and for shifting the balance of power within systems that were intentionally designed to keep you out, sometimes literally designed to keep you out, right? So I look forward to another year of doing this work together, and I'm sure we'll have some wins to celebrate next summer.
Thank you, Representative. And I think our last speaker is Representative Phillips.
Some would say saving the best for last, but some wouldn't. Representative Jackie Phillips, I represent House District 31, that's Thornton. It's not all of Thornton, mostly South Thornton, which is the marginalized community in which I live and work. So it's high crime. It's the lowest income area in Thornton, and super excited to be, elected and be involved in politics for a long, long time. So fun fact, I used to work at Disability Law Colorado. So disability rights, this is my jam. This is my life's commitment. When I worked at Disability Law a long time ago, Allison Butler was actually my mentor. And we created the legal pathway for restraint and seclusion. And then we also did the federal lawsuit, Randy Chapman and I, for Department of Justice to make sure that we didn't have vouchers. So my work is in education. I'm an education law, special education attorney. I have a current teaching license for special ed and special education director's license. So for a different meeting, I'm running the 504 bill for discrimination, and along with several other education bills. But for this meeting, I'm just super excited to continue my work, as part of advocating for disability community. My grandson has an IEP, and yeah, you can bet that he has the best services in the entire state where he lives. And so that's the kind of stuff that I care about. Standing for people with disabilities. It's just that's who I am. That's who we all are, and I really look forward to working with everybody here. Thank you, Jack.
Thank you, Representative Phillips. So the legislators up on this panel represent not all of, because we have many great legislative sponsors, but a lot of the legislators who do a lot of work on behalf of people with disabilities and who continue to champion our efforts. And so we really appreciate them and all of their work. If they will allow me, I will share their office's contact information so that you always are able to reach out to them. I believe that they're panelists. They can also, if they have another contact information, they want to put it in the chat before they leave. I will make sure that even if it is not in the chat, it gets sent out in the follow-up email on this conversation. I encourage you to reach out to them because they are great. They're very knowledgeable about what is going on in the Capitol and are also great advocates. There have been many conversations with all of the representatives here about individual constituents and how we can best advocate for their individual issues. And so even if it's strictly a legislative bill, they go above and beyond to make sure that they have the opportunity to use their legislative position to fight for equal access and fight for justice and fight for our community. And so we really appreciate them. With that, I am going to move us onto our legislative discussion. This is a group of organizations who frequently do work on behalf of people with disabilities and have an agenda on the upcoming legislative session that they wanted to discuss. And so the first person I will hand it off to is Elizabeth Moran, who is the executive director of the ARC of Colorado.
Thank you so much, Jack, and thank you to all of our state legislators who joined us today. It really means a great deal. Often in the disability community, we talk about the importance of just showing up to let folks know that you're there and you've got their back. And it means a great deal, I know, to all of us that you joined us today for this legislative preview. And special thanks to Disability Law Colorado for putting this together and hosting. So as Jack said, my name is Elizabeth Moran. I have the honor of serving as the executive director at the ARC of Colorado. I will also put some contact information in the chat. For those of you who aren't familiar with our network, we are a chapter network of 15. We have one state chapter where my team works, and then we have 14 local chapters who provide no cost advocates, advocacy, resources, education, community engagement, helping families navigate challenging spaces, but also really keeping their finger on the pulse of every community across the state of Colorado for what's working, what's not. Are there ideas for change to improve quality of life, to raise awareness, to make sure that the voices of Coloradans with disabilities, their families, their supports are being heard. So it is a great honor to be here today. I'll start with this. Our primary focus, a priority for our entire network this coming year is really around Medicaid sustainability and the services and supports that will be likely experiencing some cuts. And what does that mean for the IDD community? Perhaps what are the unintended consequences that may come from some of those? Really trying to look at those, pay attention, lift that up as a priority area, and engage the voices of folks who use those programs on a day-to-day basis and try to put them in contact with our state legislators so that they can hear directly from the consumers, the folks who are on the ground and impacted directly. We are thrilled that DLC is taking point on a guardianship reform bill. You'll recall that the ARC of Colorado, ran the Uniform Guardianship and Conservatorship Act and engaged I don't even know how many different stakeholders back 2 years ago now. And we were able to get consensus on that uniform guardianship and conservatorship bill. but we weren't able to get the appropriation. It's expensive. It's a comprehensive review. And what it does is the uniform bill proposes significant reforms to Colorado's guardianship and conservatorship law, which, as we know, not only impacts people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, but also folks with traumatic brain injuries, people who are experiencing any level of cognitive, communication disabilities, our aging population with diagnoses related to dementia and Alzheimer's. It's a whole, it's across the lifespan issue. And what we tried to run it again last year. Super thankful for Senator Snyder and his willingness to bring that back up again next year because we think it's really important to keep on folks' radar. But we also recognize the fiscal position we're in. And so DLC, like I said, has kindly taken lead on this, and we're working hand in hand with them. So I just want to bring that up. We are we're going to bring it back. And Jack, I'll invite you here in a second to give, because I think you have more current information than I even have from leaving from Thanksgiving break. But really what we're trying to do is pull some of those no-cost, really important changes that balance the scales to ensure equity and rights and best practices that are in the uniform law, making sure we're snagging some of the pieces of Colorado law that are current that we believe are maybe better than. And then I am particularly interested in ensuring that we also include what is called the Bill of Rights for particularly for adults who are subject to guardianship or conservatorship. And that came out of the 2021 National Guardianship Summit, which was the Guardianship Network, a collaboration of 13 national organizations and 125 delegates from around the country that review current guardianship policies and practices to make recommendations. And their number one recommendation was a task force to develop a Bill of Rights. And it has been adopted by resolution by nearly every national organization. And I'm happy to provide that link. I'll drop some stuff in the chat. But really what it does is it delineates very explicitly rights people have at all times if they have a guardian, some of the core human rights, decision-making rights, and then a shorter list of rights that the court can restrict personal rights without delegating them to the guardian, but only through a due process where there is a look at that person's unique situation and circumstances. And then there's also a section around what the courts may authorize a guardian to make decisions for them. Things like acquiring benefits, defending lawsuits, determining where they live, so forth and so on. So that's a piece of that legislation that the ARC of Colorado is particularly interested in. Other things, Jack, you would add to that particular piece of legislation?
Thanks, Elizabeth. I think you hit the main points for us. We have Representative Katie Stewart and Rebecca Stewart, so we're doing a Stewart bill there in the House, and our goal is to take hopefully some baby steps and keep us moving in the right direction, as well as add what we see as some critical protections around our guardianship processes here in the state. So that one is I think the third bill on Representative Rebecca Stewart's list. So it won't come out early, but it'll come out in session. So we're excited about that one. Thank you, Elizabeth, for being here and for speaking. If you wouldn't mind, or someone from your office, putting in contact information in the chat, and then obviously I have your contact information. I'll make sure to share it in the post-meeting follow-up.
You bet. Thank you so much.
Hey, Jack, this is Andrew. Just putting in a pitch for people to slow their roll for the sake of our interpreters and for everybody else who doesn't speak Moran.
Thank you, Andrew. That was a kind way of letting me know, reminding me.
Awesome. So with that, I will now turn it over to Hillary Jorgensen at the Colorado Cross Disability Coalition.
Hi everyone. Thank you, Councilman Johnson. My name is Hillary. I am one of the co-executive directors at the Colorado Cross Disability Coalition. We are a statewide advocacy organization. We have 7,000 members across the state. And our members are people with different kinds of disabilities. That's the cross part of our name. We are thrilled this year to be working with many of our partners who are on this call, supporting important things that they are doing. Our top two priorities for this legislative session. Oh, we have a baby and a cat, sorry. Our top two priorities for this legislative session. You gotta call out the babies and the cats when they come on screen, like, it's the best part of my day. So we have two top priorities on this session. The first, has been mentioned a couple of times already, but the state is facing an incredibly difficult budget year, probably next several years. And so we are laser focused on making sure that the voices of people with disabilities are heard in that budget process and weighing in on the cuts that may have to happen. We are also doing some trainings in January about the cuts and about the budget process in general. So we will put our contact info in the chat. But if you're not on our email list and you want to make sure that you get signed up for those trainings, signing up for our email list is the best way to make sure you get the announcement. Our second priority is a little bit more exciting and a little bit less depressing. So some of you may be aware that almost a decade ago now, the disability community created something called the Disability Funding Committee. We were told by decision makers that there was not enough money to fund our community's priorities. So we created a committee that has the authority to sell license plates. If you've seen the black license plates, they're red, they're blue, they're pretty ubiquitous at this point. The committee gets the money from the sale of those license plates. They also get the money from the sale of some custom plates. So, like, if you've seen plates that have, like, a saying on it or like someone's name, or I saw one that had Rafa the other day, or emo dad. Anyway, the committee has the right to auction off some of those, and the money also goes to this cash fund. Last year, the state also had a budget crisis, and the community had to fight very hard to keep the disability funding committee's cash fund from being swept. We were able to do that. However, we don't want to have that fight every year, and we want to make sure that this money stays in control of the community. So we are moving the Disability Funding Committee to an entity called a Special Purpose Authority, which is a quasi-governmental entity. There will still be some oversight to make sure that, nothing, no funny business can happen. But the money will also stay in the community's control, and it will protect the money in future years if/when we have future budget crises. And those license plates have been more successful than I think anyone in our community ever dreamed it would be. And so, this year we have to look to make sure the money stays in the community and in control of the community. So I am excited to be looking on that with multiple different stakeholders. Yeah, and we'll be supporting a bunch of the other things that you're going to hear about today. But just appreciate you guys for being here, and thank you to the legislators who took the time to be here today. We really appreciate you showing up for the community. Thanks, Chad.
Yes, thank you, Hillary. Um, I think our next panelists, we have dual panelists for this one, are Craig and Rochelle from the Centers for Independent Living. So I will let whoever of you two wants to start go for it.
Hi, good morning. My name is Rochelle Mitchell. I'm with the Association of Colorado Centers for Independent Living. Thank you, Honorable Jack Johnson, or Grand Poobah, or something like that we're supposed to call you from now on. We are very proud to be here today. My colleague Craig Smith is on as well, and he's going to speak a little bit about the bill that we are running. But I wanted to give the folks here a little bit of information about the Association of Centers for Independent Living. The Colorado Centers are 9 centers that span across the state of Colorado in every corner, and we serve about as far as the eye can see, through the mountains, in the plains, in the valleys. The 9 centers cover the entire state. We serve hundreds of thousands of Coloradoans with disabilities of every shape and form that you can imagine. The centers work together through the state of Colorado Office of Independent Living, and we are the only agencies that receive the funding for specific services, 5 specific services. Of those specific services, one of them is transitions, and that is what the bill that we are running really kind of digs into. I'm going to let Craig talk about the specifics of that, but I wanted to talk a little bit about how we came to this place. We have been charged to assist people who are in congregate care if they would like to live independently to leave congregate care. That has become increasingly difficult, even with the special Olmstead provisions with the Department of Justice action that happened a couple of years ago. Those issues with transition have caused us to really drop in numbers in the allowable amounts of people we have been able to move from congregate care facilities into their own independent living. This has even been an issue for someone who might have been hospitalized due to an accident and wanted to return back to their home. This has caused the Centers for Independent Living to lose most of our transitions professional staff. It makes retaining staff for transitions incredibly difficult. And like I said, our numbers for transitioning consumers out of congregate care facilities into their own homes has just dwindled into abysmal numbers. The bill that we are looking to run, and like I said, I'll let Craig speak to that a little bit more, really comes to a point where we've been working with HICPA for about the last 2 years, 18 months to 2 years, and we found 5 major gaps in current law. And I'd love for Craig to talk a little bit about those gaps and then what's happening with that.
Thank you so much, Rochelle, and thank you everyone for being on the call. Really appreciate your partnership and leadership, and we're really excited for another productive session. So my name is Craig. I'm the Director of Public Policy and Advocacy with the Center for People with Disabilities. We are a proud member of ACCIL. And yeah, this bill was really brought to our representatives. The bill sponsors are Representative Joseph, Representative Jackson, and Senator Amable. And this was really brought from independent living centers as service providers who are using our decades experience in transition services to have a really specific bill that fixes the systemic problems that we have come upon throughout trying to do our services, and it's really prevented us from. So I'm going to dive into the details here, and really this bill streamlines and strengthens Colorado's nursing home to community transition system by fixing 5 major gaps in current law that causes unnecessary delays, missed services, and prolonged institutionalizations. So first, it updates the long-term support services presumptive eligibility definition to include individuals transitioning out of nursing facilities. Second, It aligns all eligibility processes to start earlier, which means functional eligibility begins as soon as someone is clinically ready to transition, and financial eligibility begins when or before housing is secured, and required authorizations must be completed before discharge. Third, it clarifies that county's role during transition is simply to shift a person's status from institutional to community-based waivers, not redo financial eligibility, which causes a unnecessary delay. Fourth, it limits eligibility redeterminations to annual review, preventing disruptions during moves. And finally, it requires nursing facilities to coordinate with nursing transition coordination agencies and community providers to ensure HCBS services such as home care and meals are secured before a resident is discharged. And a really important note about this bill is we are just working to make this work as originally intended and removing barriers to independent living and allowing people to transition safely. And that's the main goal. So we're not trying to create something new. We're trying to fix a systemic issue that has been broken for a long time. So lastly, I'm going to hand it back over to Rochelle to talk a little bit about the enforcement and accountability mechanisms that are also needed for compliance.
Thank you, Craig. And I love talking about the teeth around this because it was a difficult year, as I'm sure many of our partners found, to understand what we really needed to do within here, but also not make sure that we were really not adding anything that would be fiscally burdensome to the state of Colorado. We, as Centers for Independent Living, have been trying to do our part in that, and we have not received any kind of additional funding. I believe it's been 6 or 7 years that we have not received. We've had static funding. We've been trying to be very careful about our finances and do more with less, like most of you all. But one of the things that we wanted to make sure that this made sure we had was strong but balanced enforcement tools. Public reporting and a statewide compliance dashboard held by HCPF is one of our asks. Automatic state auditor reviews for repeated non-compliance. Authority for HCPF to reassign responsibilities if counties consistently fail to meet requirements, and billing penalties for congregate care agencies that are making money while people sit in their facilities if they are to delay discharges beyond those statutory timelines with some reasonable expectations around that. But we really want to make sure that the burden doesn't fall on the consumer, the state, or the counties. We want to make sure it's falling on those that are keeping people where they don't want to be kept in congregate care facilities. These reforms create clear, coordinated, enforceable pathways to help people get home faster. And that's all that we want at ACCIL and all the Centers for Independent Living.
Thank you both. I appreciate it. That is very important work.
And Jack, I got to give
Our
a quick shout out to Atlantis, who is going to be our Denver Center. They are going to be celebrating their 50th anniversary on Friday. So 50th celebration at Atlantis on Friday. 50 years we've been doing this.
Yeah, thank you for that. And if you live in the metro area or going there, you should visit Atlantis because they also have a very cool museum. Awesome. All right, our second to last panelist is Carson Covey. So I will turn it over to Carson.
Can you all hear me? Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. For those whom I haven't yet had the privilege of meeting, my name is Carson Covey, and I am here on behalf of Family Voices Colorado and the Family Coalition, which includes Peak Parent Center, Parent to Parent of Colorado, El Grupo Vida, and Show and Tell, I come to you wearing two hats. One as a professional advocate, and one as a person with lived experience. As someone who has lived my entire life with cerebral palsy, I know firsthand the challenges individuals and families face when navigating complex systems, accessing services, and advocating for their rights. That experience shapes everything I bring to these conversations. Today, I want to share an overview of what the Joint Budget Committee has been grappling with and why it matters so deeply to the families and communities we represent. Budget priorities and committee decisions. This session, the committee has focused heavily on the organization of its leadership, adoption of operating rules, and, most importantly, the governor's proposed state budget. This includes key elements such as full funding for schools, a 5.6% increase in Medicaid funding, totaling nearly $298 million, a 2% reduction in state operating expenses, and efforts to rebuild the state reserve to 13%, with a goal of reaching 15% in the coming years. While these goals sound promising, the details show a more complex picture, especially for families who rely on Medicaid and other supports to survive. Medicaid funding and provider rates. One of the most significant debates centered on Medicaid provider rates. While the budget proposes a 5.6% increase, many committee members pointed out that this does not keep pace with inflation or the rising costs of care. For many providers, this is effectively a cut. For children with disabilities, medically complex individuals, and families in rural areas, these cuts don't just affect convenience, they affect access to care, safety, and long-term health outcomes. We heard concerns about provider shortages, rural hospitals facing potential closure, families losing access to critical services, administrative challenges that counties are not fully equipped to handle. As an advocate, and as someone who relies on the system, I feel the weight of these decisions deeply. One-time funds and budget balancing. Another major issue is the state's reliance on one-time funds, including the proposed $400 million from the sale of Pinnacle. While this helps patch immediate holes, committee members raised real concerns about the legality, sustainability, and long-term consequences of depending on temporary fixes to solve structural problems. And the reality is, even with these one-time tools, the budget still doesn't fully balance federal policy changes. The committee also discussed the upcoming federal work requirements and 6-month eligibility redeterminations for Medicaid and SNAP. Counties are already overwhelmed, and the lack of clear federal guidance has created uncertainty. These changes could lead to inappropriate disenrollment, meaning people who are eligible may lose services simply because of administrative hurdles. As someone who has experienced the consequences of gaps in care, I cannot overstate how dangerous that is. Child care, CCAP, was also highlighted as essential for meeting federal work requirements. Without adequate funding, families will face an impossible situation, required to work, yet unable to secure child care to meet those requirements. Long-term budget challenges? Looking ahead, the state faces a serious structural deficit. Projections indicate a recurring billion-dollar shortfall in future years. Much of this is driven by Medicaid healthcare policy and financing, which has grown 42% since FY 18-19. Outpacing both inflation and TABOR. The state has already exhausted many one-time tools, and departments are being asked to submit supplemental requests with zero or negative increases. The decisions made this year will echo for years to come. Legislation and development? Beyond the budget, several pieces of legislation will directly impact the disability community. Service animal accommodation legislation. Advocates are working to restore protections for emotional support animals in housing following the rescinding of federal guidance. Representative Clifford is leading this effort. Medigap open enrollment reform. Draft legislation would create an annual open enrollment period for Medigap plans and prohibit medical underwriting. This would prevent discrimination against people with pre-existing conditions, many of whom are older adults or people with disabilities. There is bipartisan interest, but also expected pushback from insurers, Medicaid budget crisis, and provider cuts. The state is facing an $850 million shortfall, with a $124 million Medicaid cut pending in January. Cuts to youth autism services and other high-need supports raise the risk of returning to waitlists, something our community fought for decades to eliminate. Why this matters? I'm here today because budgets are not just numbers, they are values. They tell us who we choose to prioritize, who we choose to protect, and whose needs we are willing to overlook. Families like mine, individuals with disabilities, rural communities, and medically fragile children cannot absorb these cuts. We cannot wait for systems to catch up while we lose access to essential care. We need a budget that is sustainable, equitable, and built with real understanding of the lived experience of the people who depend on these services. Closing, as we move forward, I urge us all, lawmakers, advocates, and community members to remain focused on the human impact behind every line item. Thank you for your commitment to this work. And thank you for allowing me to share the perspective of families and individuals who often do not have the privilege of being in rooms like this. I look forward to working together to ensure that Colorado's policies and budget truly reflect the needs of all its residents.
Thank you so much, Carson. I appreciate that. I will wrap us up by going over um, what Disability Law Colorado is working on. And many of it is in partnership, so I don't need to explain. For example, we are working with Representative Clifford Carson and the others on the protections for support animals in housing situations, as well as, I think, roping in some federal guidance around accommodations and modifications more generally in the housing context. Because while the federal government right now has only um, rescinded the guidance on support animals, it likely will rescind other guidance in the future. And so, as a backstop to that, we plan to continue to codify those protections. We're working on the guardianship legislation with the ARC of Colorado. We are also working, as Representative Katie Stewart mentioned, on protections for individuals who utilize sign language. And this is a long-term project for us, and we're going to do step one with Representative Stewart this year, and then look forward to continuing to work with her and our community partners on a longer-term solution. Representative Froelich mentioned forced sterilization is still legal in the state of Colorado. We're one of about 30 states that allows it. We intend to repeal that statute that would allow an individual to, or force an individual to be sterilized over their objection because they have a disability. We're working on host home protections. This has been an ongoing effort, and Representative Brown is leading the way to protect individuals who are in host homes and better align the expectations of oversight with the realities of how that oversight is being done. So hopefully we can improve the oversight and provide some public transparency. We are working on a bill that will protect rideshare users with the National Federation of the Blind and Representative Gretchen Ryden out of Littleton. This bill would help enhance some of the legal protections that rideshare users who use an ambulatory device or a service animal who are denied a ride typically because that ride is canceled because of that device usage or service animal. And right now, the protections related to that type of discrimination are weak. And so we're going to strengthen those protections. And finally, we're going to have a whole separate meeting with our sponsors on a large piece of legislation related to 504 protections. As many of you know, the Department of Education has been gutted. That includes the Office of Civil Rights. Right now, we have reports that every office in the country except for Kansas City and Washington, D.C. have been closed. The data shows that they've basically stopped taking cases. And so what that means is that individuals in the K-12 setting who have civil rights violations, including violations of their 504 rights, really don't have an outlet for those rights to be enforced. Many of you, I suspect, are already on that stakeholder list. It's rather broad. If you would like to be, please let us know. And we are going to be hosting a hybrid meeting with our sponsors in person at the Capitol in the new year to cover that topic. A couple of quick things before we go on to our video at the end that is created by the Think Change group at the ARC. Disability Rights Advocacy Day is being spearheaded by the Colorado Cross Disability Coalition this year. They are still finalizing a date. We will be in touch soon with that information, and we look forward to seeing as many of you as possible in person at the Capitol this spring to advocate for all of these important bills and many others, and for an opportunity for you to reach out to your legislator. If you have questions that have been unanswered, Nicole from Disability Law Colorado is going to put in the chat all the contact information from our sponsors here today, as well as some of the other organizations and Disability Law Colorado. Please reach out to us with those questions. If you direct the question to me and it belongs somewhere else, I'll make sure it gets to the right place, or you can directly reach out if you have a question that is specific to an organization. And finally, if you want to stay engaged on all of our bill work, I have the registration information. We will make sure to include you on our policy newsletter that's going to go out regularly in the spring. But if you have specific bills that you want to be engaged in through more in depth than just a weekly newsletter, please let us know. You can reach out to me and I'll make sure you get connected to the right person, or you can directly reach out to any organization that presented today or any of our sponsors who presented today, and they can make sure to keep you up to date on their list. I just saw the information that was shared posted in the chat. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Nicole, who's going to share a video about our legislative efforts that is created by the Think Change group at the Arc of Aurora.
What we're doing today is we're going to testify on House Bill 251017, or the Olmstead Act. And I think what it is we're trying to make sure people's evidence voices are heard, to have supports in place. Yeah, so what we're doing is just being involved in Capitol, making sure that the people who need to be heard are totally heard.
It's a big deal for me. And to kind of get into what this bill does, this is related to codifying in state law what was decided by the United States Supreme Court in 1999.
So this bill does two really important things, modeled after Olmstead. The first is it solidifies that right that people have to live in their community in the least restrictive environment, and to not be institutionalized. And then the second thing is it invests resources from the state in ensuring that the state has an up-to-date comprehensive Olmstead plan, not only right now, but improving every 3 years, so that we can track how well they're doing in complying with Olmstead, and we can make sure that we're always using the most up-to-date information and modeling and technology to ensure that we're getting as many people out of institutions as possible.
I met young people with developmental disabilities who were institutionalized. They weren't being educated and prepared for any kind of independent life. They were isolated. I left every day heartbroken and frankly angry. These kids have dreams. They had potential, but they were being written off by a system that never expected anything of them.
HB 251017 was a really important bill for us to pass. Much of that importance hinged on our current political climate and our uncertainty on if Olmstead would stay the same.
Colorado, being the state that it is, a relatively forward-thinking state, wanted to push forward something that if the federal Olmstead cases collapsed, we would still have a state-based Olmstead that was really important, so that I can go and do what other non-disabled folks do.
Living independently, living integrated within a community shouldn't be something that we're debating here. It should be just part of life.
Moving forward, I see only possibilities of living in an environment with friends and continuing to live and work in an integrated community. In my 25 years, I have yet to meet anyone in my population who would prefer an institutionalized living situation.
What happened in that first committee hearing, where we were really getting stonewalled, right? Like we couldn't see a path forward, negotiations had stalled. And so we said, we have the support of the community, so let's do it. Let's go to committee.
If you would like to give us your testimony, introduce yourself to the committee.
And in some cases, committee, I'll be allowing a little bit extra time for some of our witnesses to testify. So thank you.
Since the Supreme Court passed the Olmstead Act, I have personally seen the profound changes in the lives of people with disabilities.
Sometimes I need to learn things, and I always help others. I am strong, I am kind, I am capable, I belong in my community. It was an awesome and empowering day.
I feel ready. A little bit not nervous, more like excited. I am so glad that times have changed and that I'm able to get services at home. When I get services through VERC, I have a mentor named Marin who comes over and she teaches me skills such as cooking, cleaning, and also like even how to responsibly budget. So when I do move into my own apartment, I have those skills I need to be successful. When they seem responsive, it gives you that sense of relief that there's senators and government people that want to do the right thing and listen.
When we're not in the room, it's those people over there, you know, that, yeah, we can kind of plan for them, do whatever, meet their needs, but until I'm a person with a disability are at the meetings, it goes from those people over there to we. And it brings a real face, real humanity to the issue.
Mr. Chair and members of the committee, thank you for letting me come and share my story. My name is Waverly Bowser. I have a 13-year-old brother named Wesley. His heart stopped beating when he was a baby, so he cannot walk, talk, hear, or see very well. Despite this, he loves music, he plays the drums, and he is very compassionate. I look up to Wesley a lot for all the things he does and how hard he works. I have grown up with him my whole life, so this bill is important to me. Wesley has taught me to be brave and to stay strong even in the hard times. I have dreams for Wesley's future, like to get married, to feel included, and to experience good things, like eating marshmallow fluff and having pets. My dreams can come true with the help of this bill to guarantee Wesley's right to live at home. Will you please help people like my brother to have a better life by making sure they can live with their family in their own homes? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bowser. Thank you. I'm sorry, I can't be clapping. I'm sorry. I have to be Chairman Killjoy today. Thank you very much for sharing your story. You're an excellent advocate for your brother. Please.
Unbelievable response. People were showing up at the Capitol. The bill was in committee in an hour. And that was when finally we were able to get a deal and succeed. And it was that last little bit of pressure that really made all of the difference between a win or a loss for that bill.
This is 13-0.
Ms. Basenecker.
Yes.
Bottoms.
Yes.
And Madam Chair.
Yes. That bill passes on a vote of 10 to 1.
And I urge a yes vote.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before the body is the passage of House Bill 1017. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and House Bill 1017 is passed. Will the clerk please read the title of the House Bill 1209?
It's official. Congratulations.
To get the Homestead bill back is a great and a big accomplishment for the state of Colorado.
We never expected, I think, that we were going to get such a powerful piece of legislation passed, intact, like this really impactful thing that we didn't have to water down, we didn't have to cut out. And so it was an incredible feeling of accomplishment because of, not only passing a piece of legislation, but the way the community came together as a model for things we want to do in the future. Like, we accomplished something bigger than just passing a bill. We accomplished what my friend Josh described as the most organized and effective the community has been that he's ever seen.
Now that the Olmstead bill has passed, I think what we need is accountability. And I think what people need to do if it's not working, say something. And I think this also, for me, it's a great step. But we have so much farther to go. So I think with Olmsted is just making sure that we keep pushing it.
Thank you. And as you saw at the end, the full version will be available in January. So keep a lookout for that. And if you want to be added to the list, let us know. It is the thing change out of the Arc of Aurora. They'll let you know when it's posted. We appreciate you all being here today. We look forward to seeing you throughout the legislative session. I want to give another shout out to the legislators who are here and who presented to us today. As you saw, it was their efforts that have really uplifted our community, and they're championing our work. It makes it possible. So we appreciate you all. I hope you have a great week, and please let us know if you have any questions. Thank you.